going to go on. In the last section, I was talking about the survival brain versus the thrival brain and these two dopaminergic or reward pathways in our brain. They're both learning pathways. They're both reward pathways. They learn based on different equations. Our true self, our mesocortical pathway. I don't think I gave the name of that, but our mesocortical pathway is the dopaminergic part of our brain that rewards us for things like hard work, things like sacrifice, things like goal setting, things like purpose and meaning. They don't hit us. We don't get hits of dopamine and pleasure spikes. If you guys remember in Russ's class, he talks about kind of the up and downs versus like the baseline growth when it comes to quality of life and self-worth. So very much in the same way, when we that same exact curve applies here. When you decide to stop doing drugs, you're used to living a drug life where you get these hits of, if this is pleasure, up here, and this is pain down here, normal life does this, right? And what we try and do is make it, kind of go up here so that there is pain, but it has a general positive net, of pleasure. And so that's, your normies, that's kind of what their life hopefully looks like, although a lot of the time what they don't know is that they're down here, and they just don't know what they don't know. Addicts, on the other hand, they live a life that looks more like this. It's moment to moment, and it is hits of crack and hits of alcohol and highs, with these plummets. And what happens over time with that even is it starts to go down like this to the point where they're just trying to get normal for a minute. Okay? And their net gain of pleasure is absolutely in the toilet to the point where they're just kind of trying to cope. But because of this change here, that's what keeps them going. It's the change from there to there that is so rapid. That's that seeking immediate change. Even though it's only bringing them from depths of despair to normal, that jump is reinforcing. It's that button that the rat pushed. Does that make sense? Which makes it very hard to escape. And so what we want to do as we go into recovery is we want to recognize the short-term pleasure and the short-term pain avoidance and seeking. And we want to have this net gain of pleasure that will still have, it's still going to have its up and downs, but we've got a net gain going on. So this very much applies, right to the graph that Russ showed you in his group. So, what I want to talk about in this group is this self. You heard Russ talk about it. If you've gone through Ren'ais'sance Ranch, you've heard it a lot. You've seen the rocks. You've heard of the ego defense mechanisms. I want to talk a little bit about that. To do that, we're going to have a math class. Russ, Preston, can I get you guys to participate in the math class?
I'll try.
Okay. So there is a concept. I'm going to introduce some concepts beforehand. We're going to talk about something called cognitive dissonance. Okay, and you'll hear people use this term. Lots of people like to throw this term out. Some people use it right. Most people don't use it exactly right. So that you understand from a physiological perspective, when we're talking as a neuroscientist, cognitive dissonance is a non-event. Cognitive dissonance doesn't happen except for with the plan of action after it. There is no resting cognitive dissonance. It does not happen. It's an impossible state. And I'm going to show you what that means. So what cognitive dissonance means is we have disharmony in our cognitions. Okay? That means something doesn't equal. I want you to think of the brain as an electrochemical tool, because that's what it is. Or, for our purposes here, an electrical. So, if everybody remembers our little map here, we've got circuits. These are circuits. They are circles. If the message doesn't go out to the true self sends a message to the brain, do the right thing, and the ventral tegmental area sends back a little hit of dopamine and says the right thing is good for us. Here's you feeling good for it. And you go, okay, I know who I am and I know what I stand for. Good job saying no to those drugs. And I pat myself on the back. That is the circuit, but it takes me sending the action and the brain sending the reward. That's the circuit. It has to go both ways. If you turn on the light switch and you click it up and the message goes from the light switch to the light, turn on, but no message comes back from the light to the switch that says, okay, it is a non-event. There is no switching on of the light without the completion of the circuit. There is no thought without the completion of the circuit. The brain is an electrical device. It has to have circuits. It has to be grounded and have a complete circuit. Scientific fact, not really up for debate, but just, go ahead and trust me for fun. So, cognitive dissonance would be a disharmony in our thoughts and our actions, which is tantamount to a non-circuit. The brain really does not allow it. But don't worry, we got an answer for it. So, we're going to go back to our duality. Remember our duality? And now we're going to take, and we're going to tease out our duality. Well, that's all right. You guys got the word, right? We're going to tease out our duality in a separate way. We're going to have our true self over here, okay? And we are going to have our actual self over here, okay? And you can also group in your carnal self to this if you'd like to, or your natural man, or whatever you want to, the beast, your survival self, okay? So always remember that you can think of these things by whatever term you want to, depending on what resonates with you. I'm going to use these two, okay? And I'm wondering whether I should propose something first, because I'd like to propose something to you all. What I would like to propose to you, what I would like to propose to you is that inside each of us is a true self. He is a spiritual man. He is divine in nature. And he has a set of values and morals that are perfect. And then it gets inside of this thing with thoughts and emotions and hunger and pain and trauma and rejection and hurt and loneliness and chemical imbalances, not enough serotonin, too much norepinephrine, a lack of dopamine firing in the system. All sorts of these, and those things all have names. We call them things like major depressive disorder and generalized anxiety disorder and attention deficit disorder. But those are dysregulations in the chemicals in your brain. So we get into this body here that has all of those things going on and has behaviors like impulsivity and reactivity and shame and stuff like that. And we engage and we even forget who this guy is. So my proposition to you is that this guy is perfect. If you could find a way, and we can't, so here's the bad news, we can't cut out the bullshit. We're too attached to a lot of it. We'll never really be able to cut out all of the bullshit. Our brain's always going to tell us some lies, and it's always going to feed us messages that just aren't true. And so we'll never cut it out entirely, but we can learn to recognize it. We can learn to recognize the devil or the carnal self or the natural man or the survival brain when it's saying you can't do it, you're no good, it's too hard, and we can say bullshit. I know who you are, and I reject you, and you can talk back to it. But that's tough, that takes growth. But my proposition again is that this guy is probably perfect. It's just the things we say, feel, and do. They're all effed up. So, cognitive dissonance. Here's an example. We're going to start with math. So let's forget this for a minute. In fact, I'll just go over here. No, I'll go up here. Okay? Well, we'll just do it right here. Let's do it. And we'll say 2 equals 1. Preston, can that exist? Here's cognitive dissonance.
You get creative enough.
Okay, can this exist?
No.
Can it exist?
I don't think so.
Okay, so we must do something to it. Because the brain is not going to be okay with this. It's a non-event. 2 does not equal 1. No. Nope, can't happen. No event. No mathematics going on here yet. Okay, so what does the brain do? Go ahead.
Starts maybe trying to think outside the box.
Okay, so what could you do here? Make it work.
Make it work?
Uh-huh.
Alright. Yeah, depends on what you're trying to do. 2, put a line through it, now it's 1.
Okay, all right.
Just depends.
Nice, I like it. Good thinking. Let's just go basic math. Make the equation work, Russ.
I would change the 1 to a 2.
Okay? How do you do that? How do you
in our brain? In my brain?
How do you mathematically make a 1 into a 2?
Multiply? Add 1. Okay.
Okay, so we add 1.
Social worker. Come on.
Sorry guys, I should have said basic math. Basic math. You come into the equation and you add 1 to that side. Feel that? Harmony restored. And now we have cognitive consonants. And that is all is right with the world. You feel that? And what we did in this case was we protected the 2. Okay, we decided the 2 is what we care about, and so we protected it by adding 1 to this side. But you see that? See that? Awesome. Okay, now, here we have a 1. 1 does not equal 2. How do we change it? Now you got it. Preston, what do you do?
Minus 1.
There we go. If we want to protect that 1, all we got to do is come over here to the 2 and subtract 1. Feel that, everybody? Cognitive consonance is restored, all is right with the world, and the equation makes sense. Okay, so now we've got our actual self. And our actual self, that's our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Remember I was just talking about our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that are all left up? Okay, so our actual self over here, we'll just call them behaviors. When I say behaviors, I actually mean thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Because believe it or not, thinking is a behavior. Believe it or not, feeling is a behavior. Feeling is a behavior, just here's a shiny object. Feeling is a behavior that is based on your beliefs and your thoughts. So if I think it's okay that Preston is disrespectful sometime, then when he does that, I'll go, that's all right, Preston's a human. Sometimes humans are disrespectful. If, on the other hand, I have a belief that nobody should ever, ever, ever be disrespectful to me or else, and then Preston's disrespectful to me, what do I feel?
This is making so much sense now.
Yep, I feel anger, right? So my emotions, for all intents and purposes, they come from my beliefs and my thoughts about the world and how it should behave. So here's the credo here. I create how I feel by how I think about the people and events around me. I am the only one who can change how I feel by changing the way I think. So that's when we get into REBT, that statement is actually the ABC model. So each of those little parts of that statement are actually the A, B, C, D, and E of the ABC model of REBT, which we'll get into in another class. So we have our behaviors here, though. Thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And over here, we have our values. And so my friend Russ, he believes in honor. And yet sometimes he lies. That creates, for Russ, it creates dissonance, meaning he's not okay with it. Somewhere in him, he says, well, that's not okay. So, Russ, how do you restore consonance?
In an equation, like in this equation.
Want me to help you out?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna.
We have
add.
We have a natural mechanism. Every one of us knows it. Every one of us has experienced it. It is as natural and old as we are. We add guilt, and we add behavior change. So Russ if we want to protect this. So Russ tells a lie, and he says to himself, wait a minute, I'm honorable. He feels a little bad because he knows he is more than what he's doing. He is more than what he is doing. And so he goes back to the person and says, hey man, I lied to you and that's not who I am. And he tells the truth. You want to know the problem with that though? Remember our short-term pleasure and our long-term pleasure and our short-term pain and our long-term pain? Russ, does this feel good when you're doing it?
Short-term pain.
That hurts, man. Going up to somebody and saying, man, I lied to you. It's humiliating. That person might reject you. They might shun you. They might tell other people. They'll judge you. They'll think bad about you. And so it's scary to do this completely natural answer to almost everything we do wrong. And so, what very frequently happens is that instead, we come over here and we say, well, it was just a little lie. Well, I told the truth 100 times today. Well, you know what? Everybody lies sometimes. I'm just a piece of shit liar anyway. So I want to pause right here, and I want to point something out. For Lane's intents and purposes, and when you were in classes with me, I would like to operationally define two words and differentiate them. We intermix them all the time, and that's okay. For my intents and purposes, when I speak of one word, I will mean an entirely different thing than when I speak of the other word. This is guilt. It is additive. It says I am more than what I am doing. Change it. Be better. Be you, Lane. Be your true self. Be more. You are worth more. You are worth more. Shame wants to protect this, and so it will change this guy. It'll say you are less than this because you told that lie. You are not enough. You are worth less or worthless. And it will allow you, because this is defense. This is defense right here. The way you defend the brain from cognitive dissonance is by restoring consonants. And you can defend it in two ways. You can defend it on this side of the equation, or you defend the value by changing the behavior and feeling guilt, or you can defend this side of this side of the equation, where you change the belief about yourself, change the value, or engage in an ego defense mechanism. Why do we call it an ego defense mechanism, Lane? Because guess who it's defending? Because it is defending the ego. Another word for these. Remember when I was giving all those words for them in the last class? This is your id, this is your super ego. Super ego is your true self. That's a good thing. The super ego is good. This over here is your id and your ego. The ego is more like the actual self, and the id is like the natural man. It's the beast. Okay, so the id is that beast. The ego is this actual self trying to reconcile his freaking body and all the pain and hurt and the desire to lie and escape humiliation and escape pain and feel okay and be able to get through the world. He's got to fight, that. And he's got to feel okay about himself. But he doesn't always want to change this because it's so hard and humiliating and rough. And he wants to stay in bed. He wants to eat the cookie. He wants to have the soda. He doesn't want to work out. And he wants to keep the lie because he doesn't want to tell Preston that he told the truth because it's too humiliating. Preston's not going to like him anymore. He really likes being liked by Preston. And so he engages in an ego defense mechanism. And the problem with ego defense mechanisms is they allow you to keep being incongruent with your true self. Now, this is a lot. But the good news is, this is a wonderful flag system. if you are wondering, who am I and what do I stand for? Because we're all wondering that. The journey to an actualized self, meaning I know who I am, I know what I stand for, and I'm doing that, that journey is a long one. And it doesn't have an arrival. You're never going to wake up one morning and go, hey, I'm actualized. Done. It is a pathway. As we start to tease out all of the things that we stand for, we'll find out what's most important to us. How much time can I spend on work to be a good employee? How much time can I spend on fatherhood to be a good father? What are the things that are most important to me, and how do I balance all of those things so that I am doing my best in every aspect of my life? And I've got some bad news. Here's a shiny object. I've got some bad news for you about doing our best. It's all what men interpret that is doing your most. And that's just compulsivity. That's just another word for addiction. Doing our best means all aspects of our life, and so it's almost always about limits. I can't be the best father and the best husband and the best employee and the best person in recovery and the best, recreator and the, I can't be the best of those things unless I put limits on each of them. Because anytime I give too much to one, the other areas are suffering, and that is where we get imbalance, and imbalance is just the beginnings of compulsivity. And we as addicts, we are most people. And so when we get a job, it's 120 hours a week. If we're going to make money, we're going to make $1 million a year. I know who I am and what I stand for, and I'm going to balance these things and take care of all of these aspects of our life. So that was a little shiny object, but the reason for it is for you to understand that as you were going through this, as you were deciding who I am and what I stand for, we don't always realize we're full of shit. We don't realize that we are telling ourselves lies. We don't realize that we are engaged in an ego defense mechanism. So here is the little red flag for you. If in your brain you have to explain what you're doing, check yourself. Check yourself. Because no one ever has to explain why they were honorable. No one ever has to explain why they sacrificed. No one has to explain why they were caring or loving or good or patient. You don't have to rationalize why you were patient with somebody, because it's already your true self. If you're explaining it, then it's probably over here. Now that translates to compulsivity and best. If I'm explaining why I'm working so hard, I'm probably out of balance with my work. If I'm explaining why I'm on the 57th text message with my wife that day, I'm probably out of balance with the time I'm spending on my wife and our relationship, and other things are suffering. So your explanations and your excuses and your rationalizations and your justifications, they're ego defense mechanisms that are keeping you more in your actual self and more in your ego and out of your balance and who your true self is, because your body will already tell you, if you're paying attention to it, when you're being true to your true self, because it will feel peaceful, because it doesn't need an explanation to restore the consonants. Dissonance is the need to explain. And you will explain either through this, guilt and behavior change, or through this. Does that make sense? Okay, so a quick wrap up on part 2. If you can use this kind of equation that I showed here to just keep an inventory on yourself. In future sessions, we may talk about the true self and the balance wheel, either with Brian or with Russ or with me. That is where, especially where some of these ego defense mechanisms come in that rationalize why we're out of balance. We want to be able to click ourselves. And then when you're doing things like lying and cheating and stealing and hurting people and being disrespectful and stuff like that, those are good opportunities. If you see yourself doing that, check yourself. Use this tool as a reminder, as a red flag to check yourself. That's all I have for session 2. We'll see you in session 3.